Wake up everybody, because it is once again time for my annual Game of the Year award show. And hey, 3 weeks earlier than last year. Look at us all hardworking and disciplined, and actually, games were just kind of shorter this year. Oh, so still mediocre, right? So last year I did my first ever Game of the Year video, which included my 10 favorite games and some honorable mentions. Unsurprisingly, this year we'll continue the trend, but with a couple new segments I wanted to highlight. 2021 was a very strange year in gaming, highlighted by a lot of delays for some games and a return to form for others. With massive supply shortages plaguing the tech sector, gaming responded with not a bad year. There certainly are great games. In fact, I'd say there's a lot more than last year, but I don't feel like there was that strong lineup of 10 out of 10 games that really led the discussion. Is that because of the lack of third-person action games? Who's to say, but it did lead to quite a lot of diversity in the top bracket of this year's lineup. That being said, let's get started. So that Arcane show, pretty good, right? Yeah, I loved it. Might be the greatest video game adaptation of all time. Even more so, it's probably the most interested I've been in a Riot game ever. So maybe this is finally the time we get into League of Legends. Oh dear God. So Pokemon Unite was my most played game of 2021, which is shocking because, again, I am not a MOBA person. I tried playing League of Legends years ago, but I was overwhelmed by all the different items and all the people yelling at me. Bander, stop running at the turret! You're such a disappointment! I'm sorry, Dad! Pokemon Unite, however, it's just easy, which makes sense because it's Pokemon. What was Baby's first RPG is now Baby's first MOBA. 2 lanes in a jungle, handful of equipment, and very clear and easy to learn roles. Knocking out set mobs, take on the enemy team, and secure objectives. All together points which you take to opponents' goals and slam dunk them to score. Other than that, it's just Pokemon. It's simple, fast, 10-minute games, but with enough diversity to keep things fresh. Also, this game has honestly the best post-launch rollout I have ever seen in a live service game. Unite has released 10? Since you wrote this, it's now 12. 12 new Pokemon since its launch in July, and that is an insane rate. It's not all super well balanced, but the game is patched often. I do have to acknowledge the controversy surrounding this game. It is heavily monetized in multiple areas: Pokemon, cosmetics, battle passes, loot boxes, item enhancers. It's a lot, especially for a game targeted at kids, but I'm not a child. I have a credit card, and it doesn't have any charges for Pokemon Unite on it, except the Zera skin, because I had to have it. Now for my gaming time, it's honestly pretty rare for me to pick up a shooter. It has to really bring something new to the table to get me on board. And Deathloop brought a feast. The 60s Art Deco inspired time loop game really made an impact on me as soon as I saw the first trailer. Unfortunately, Bethesda didn't get the memo because they gave us 19 more trailers after that. I get it. The game's cool. Help. Using a time loop mechanic to solve puzzles and master the route isn't a novel idea, but combined with Arcane Studios' masterful level design and fun abilities, gives Deathloop a perfect sense of empowerment. At the start, you're going to want to take things very slow and carefully and observe the map, but after playing through a few times and learning all the intricate shortcuts, you will start flying through these buildings. The story is pretty decent, ending is a little lacking, and some important details are a bit too complex for a casual playthrough. Colt, however, is fantastic, and the Visionaries are a bunch of ridiculous assholes, and I love them for it. Plenty of side stories require you to make multiple trips around the map at different times to get the full picture, and it's mostly rewarding. At a certain point, the game does start to get a little samey before Colt figures out the perfect route. I had already realized what to do because the game really spells it out for you. Luckily, the gunplay and the abilities made this more fun than tedious. Last thing is that the game had some pretty bad glitches for me. Some of the other games on this list did too, but this was the only one where the issues persisted months after the fact. None of this ruined my experience, however, as Deathloop still remained an extremely well-designed, smooth to play, fun to master shooter experience. In the world of video games, there stands a few walls. Games whose reputation of complexity, difficulty, and length rings so loudly that the thought of even trying to get them is too much of a hassle. Games like Final Fantasy XIV, or Counter-Strike, or even Kingdom Hearts. It's not that complicated. You just have to play 8 different games on 5 different consoles, watch a 4-hour-long cutscene movie, play a board game, and maybe stay at a hotel to understand everything. Monster Hunter has always been about slow, methodical, but satisfying combat built under complex systems that feed into the greater whole. 2018's Monster Hunter World sought to address this by bringing a bit more approachability to this, and more so with this year's Monster Hunter Rise. Built from the ground up for the Switch, it is one of the biggest accomplishments on the system. a beautiful world, locked 30 frame rate, and very, very quick load times. This game is a technical marvel, and in my opinion, the best looking game on the Switch. I'm a newcomer to the series, but Rise's onboarding got me going almost immediately. Fighting giant monsters in a massive, well-designed area using a giant spear, a cat, and a dog is a blast. Learning every intricate combo for your weapon so you can completely dismantle each of the game's major threats is extremely satisfying, and even heading back to the village to prep is a fun and streamlined experience. The new dog mounts and wire bug systems make getting around the maps a breeze, and makes collecting a quick and easy task. This game does everything it can to make things simple while still retaining that series' trademark boss fights. Monster Hunter slaps, and if you've ever been interested in this series, this is a great starting point. The co-op genre is my Achilles heel in gaming. It's not often I get excited by a co-op game because I usually am only able to get a friend to play for a couple sessions before one of us ends up bouncing. I would like to formally apologize to the following co-op experiences. When It Takes Two launched, I had hope for the first time in a long while. It's short, linear, and constantly keeps things fresh. Every level pairs you and your partner with a different set of tools that lets you play the game in a different way. This meant that if there's a single idea that wasn't working for either player, the next one just might. Even when I felt like one mechanic wasn't hitting for me, the game would add just a few more layers of complexity to it as to not leave me bored for too long. Not feeling the garden sickle? Ride the spider! And now you're getting chased by moles. Wait! Frog taxis. It Takes Two is the perfect co-op game with some of the funniest, wackiest set pieces I've ever seen. One boss fight in particular, no spoilers, has both players running around in an arena for a normal 3-hit phase, then one player is jumping and dodging lasers while the other is navigating a platforming section to knock the boss out, and phase 3 is just one of the funnest shifts in power dynamics I've ever seen. There's also vehicles, a Diablo dungeon crawler, tons of minigames, a war between a hive of hornets, and some very questionable squirrels. Hail Squirrel Hydra. And a very scary lanternfish. This game is a blast. I will say the story is a bit of a weaker part. It's funny and creative, but the game is about a divorcing couple forced to go on a therapy adventure, and while I don't want to spoil anything, the ending doesn't really fit with how the story was leading to. And similar to Deathloop, it just kind of ends. Also, Cody and May are kind of awful people. They do some really messed up stuff. Oh well. The game is still wonderful, and something that I suggest that any good gamer, or not, give a shot. Every so often, a game will be revealed that the world just wants to watch fail. But I, the humble and enlightened Bander, can usually see through these misguided critics and see the potential in what a game has to offer. Coming after the disastrous launch of Marvel's Avengers by Crystal Dynamics, the reveal of Guardians of the Galaxy by Eidos Montreal left people very skeptical. Avengers couldn't quite nail the feel of the heroes you play as, but when Eidos revealed that Guardians is a single-player Star-Lord game, I knew this was the right decision. The internet disagreed, but who's laughing now? Because Guardians of the Galaxy is one of the best games of the year and the best story of the year. Guardians is a bombastic, perfect comic book adventure where you travel the galaxy, visiting all sorts of colorful but strange planets in order to not only save the galaxy, but save the Guardians as well. You see, this version of the Guardians is a combination of the comics, the movies, and EM's own spin. And it really works for the video game format. The team starts off in a very different place than what we're used to. They're all together, but none of them really like each other. You're constantly bickering back and forth, no one really trusts each other, Drax is trying to kill Gamora, you know, Guardian things. Throughout the game, the relationships between the team will constantly be challenged, building up the bonds between some characters while simultaneously breaking down others. You're never in a perfect spot with everybody. And each Guardian has their own personal story mixed into all of this as well. Gamora is hinted at as you go through, Drax is more focused in the middle, Rocket is more towards the start and peppered in later, and Peter is built up throughout bigger flashbacks. Not only that, the game has an insane amount of dialogue, and while not all of it is perfect, it does feel like the movie quality banter and writing these games deserve. Especially when Mantis and Gamora brutally berate me for going down a different path. I love it. For the gameplay and running around the worlds, you explore, solve puzzles, make choices, and there's even some fun but short ship battles to mix things up. The one part that brings this game down for me a bit is the combat. It's not bad, but it tends to get a little chaotic-y and mashy. Team abilities are hard to use effectively, and a lot of the enemies tend to be just giant damage sponges. Boss battles, though, are a lot of fun, but the final boss really glitched out on me, and it was just kind of a weird experience overall. And the huddle-up mechanic was a good idea, but not exactly executed well enough. The reward is awesome, but the word puzzles stopped being interesting after the third or fourth attempt. But even some tedium issues with the combat and glitches isn't enough to ruin this experience for me. It's one of my favorite gaming stories ever, and the best the Guardians have ever been. Inscription, the indie card game / roguelite from Devolver Digital and Daniel Mullen Games, is a game that a lot of industry people were really hyping up as this crazy-ass, mind-blowing experience, a story that goes places and completely subverts expectations. And it is. I really don't want to spoil anything that happens in this game. I truly think it's best to just give it a shot and see for yourself, and don't worry, everything you see here is only from the beginning of the game. Inscription in a nutshell is a card game with a dark mystery theme. For the most part. It starts off really simple and slowly layers on more rules as you progress. The first part is entirely roguelite, and I really think this helps you get to know the mechanics. Having to restart every time you make too many mistakes, you learn the cards and the patterns between different classes. And when you get to later parts, it feels like a different game, but you still understand the fundamental way to play the game. It can be broken pretty easily, however, as you can end up steamrolling through the whole game with a couple of good card combos. Although with how obvious some of this is, I imagine this is intentional for the pacing. You start off in this creepy room with nothing but a dude forcing you to play this card game. It's not horror, but the vibe is very scary, and you never know what messed up things you'll have to do to progress. The ending sequences are incredible, and reflects back to earlier parts of the game and provides context that completely changes how you view the game as a whole. And there is one specific moment, one small section that is so unbelievably 10 out of 10 hype that when I saw it, I nearly jumped out of my chair and shouted. The entire game is worth it alone just to experience it. There's a demo out now on Steam, and the game is only like $20. Play Inscription. Kena may look like a cheery, colorful game about solving puzzles with cute, fuzzy friends, but from the first moments with this game's amazing opening, things are very clear. This is not a happy tale. Kena is a spirit guide who's traveling to a secluded shrine in order to connect with her late father. Along the way, she finds the village surrounding the shrine has been stricken with a horrible rot that has taken over a once beautiful valley. I don't want to delve too deep into spoilers, but the game focuses on helping the village deal with their grief, regret, and failure. A lot of sad times ahead. And while the game loop involves your typical action-adventure deal, the unique draw of the game is the rot system. Run around the world, find cute rot creatures, use them to solve puzzles, defeat monsters, and take cute photos. The puzzles using the rot are all very run-of-the-mill basic move objects around. However, there are some really solid Zelda-like puzzles that I really wish the game committed to way more, as they were a blast to solve. Combat-wise, it's fairly standard, but with a few unique twists. They've got these cool sticky bombs, some rot-infused power-ups that encourage aggressive play, and a pretty precise counter system that eats at your shield if you mess up. Not to mention, a decent amount of upgrades for your powers and moves. These are not only used for combat, but also for exploration. The world of Kena is a blast to explore. As you slowly clear away more and more rot, you'll find yourself able to access new areas, take on new challenges, and find collectibles. There are some really amazing set pieces here as well, especially in the game's handful of underground dungeons. Definitely helps that this game has a fantastic lighting engine and a stellar score. The combat is also surprisingly difficult. Most normal enemy encounters aren't too bad, but anything with a ton of enemies, or one of the game's many bosses and named mobs, and you will really need to learn your patterns. In fact, there's a lot of hidden depth to all the systems that the game slowly layers on for you. Balancing between close combat ranged arrows, sticky bombs, and the many defensive options leaves you with a ton of room for creativity, but also pushes you to find the best path forward. The second boss fight in particular really nails combining all of your different moves to create openings along with the boss testing your mastery of the dodge and counter system. It really nails that Souls-like trial and error system of learning and improving. Top that off with this boss having incredible music that's incorporated in the boss's movements, stunning visuals, smooth 60 frames per second, and you've got one of my favorite boss fights of all time. Kena is a game I wanted to see succeed the most this year. Its stunning visuals and whimsical animations are easy to get on board with, but it's the darker story undertones, intricate explorable world, and intense combat that makes Kena one of the best games of the year. Halo Infinite. What a great success story for this game. And in all honesty, I thought this game was going to be booty garbo, but thanks to Xbox having people in charge that don't want their storied franchises to be a complete mess, we actually have one of the most solid shooter experiences ever made. Halo Infinite is a really good foundation for what will hopefully be a must-play staple for the Xbox ecosystem. Guns feel incredible, movement is fast and fluid without feeling overly frantic like Halo 5, and the new equipment system is the perfect blend of Halo 3 and Reach. Right from the get-go, you know you were playing a Halo game, and 343 deserves all the praise in the world for finally hitting that sweet spot. And my god, this grapple hook might be the best item in any Halo game. It fits perfectly in Halo's physics-based sandbox. You can grab weapons, save yourself from falls, and wreak havoc on the enemy team with a sword. It's so much fun. While the multiplayer itself does have some issues like connection stability and poor menu design, and a really slow content rollout, the core gameplay is more than enough to keep me coming back each week. Campaign, however, is a whole different story. I personally have not been a fan of Halo campaigns and shooting campaigns in general since Halo Reach. Granted, I haven't really played a ton of shooters since that era, but still, Halo Infinite really needed to do something different to get me on board. And for the most part, they achieved that. The open world structure for Halo Infinite was a perfect fit. Running down to banish strongholds using any combination of weapons, vehicles, and marines is the perfect evolution from the classic games. Just being able to give a marines a bunch of rockets and riding them into the battle is the perfect amount of Halo jank, and I am all about it. The story for the most part is decent. Par for the course for a Halo game, am I right? Kept me engaged for the most part, and I did come around to the main villain story eventually. Good action game drama, and even managed to bring a lot more character to Chief, without breaking down what his character should be. Overall, I enjoyed the campaign a lot, but I can't help but feel the game was held back by the baggage of other 343 games. In fact, the story does everything it can to make Halo 5 completely irrelevant. Fortunately, I think this was the right choice, but I left this campaign feeling like this is the game we should have gotten back in like 2017. It's a blast to play, but doesn't exactly scream next-gen experience. Oh well. Overall, the parts of Halo Infinite that I loved is the core gameplay. It's an evolution of Bungie's original vision, feels familiar, but gives enough tools to stand above what came before it. The story is solid and the open world aspects really fit. Some issues with the multiplayer and repetitive elements aside, Halo Infinite is Halo, finally back. Psychonauts has always been a game I should have played like 15 years ago. 3D platformer, story focused, artsy-fartsy graphics style. It's like if you were to combine Invader Zim and The Nightmare Before Christmas. It's like a Hot Topic wet dream. Lots of level diversity. The game was practically made for me. So, with the sequel coming out, I finally decided to dive in. Let me tell you, the love that this game gets is totally earned. It's a magical, charming little game. The controls don't exactly hold up, but I think it's definitely worth a playthrough. Except for maybe that final level. Psychonauts 2, however, is a modern platforming classic. All of my issues with the first game practically disappeared with this gorgeous and polished sequel. All of the charming ways Psychonauts works with mental concepts like emotions, fears, and damage, like sorting emotional baggage or lighting doubts on fire, are all helped underline the core themes of handling your mental health. And it's never heavy-handed either. Whether it's helping a dude deal with how alcohol has affected his relationships, or another with anxiety and how it's made them think everyone around them hates them, it's really something special. And all of this is done in some of the most creative level ideas in gaming. In one level, you're exploring a giant mental library, and all the characters are from actual books but made out of paper. It's really cool. Or the level where you must slowly introduce his soul to all of its senses to help him remember who he is. Exploring minds and the world of Psychonauts is a joy, if a little clunky. You're quickly given a handful of traversal options that help you navigate in creative ways. Combat-wise, it's okay. It can get a bit tedious when you have a lot of enemies on screen. It's not hard, you're not dying at all, it just takes a while. Game doesn't focus too much on this, thankfully. The boss fights, however, are excellent. They use the themes of the levels, your abilities, and fun twists on the core mechanics in clever, bombastic set pieces. These are probably the best parts of the game. While many people waited almost 2 decades for a follow-up to the original, I am a complete newcomer to the series in Double Fine. Safe to say, I can see why both are so highly praised. Psychonauts 2 is an incredible follow-up and a satisfying conclusion. At the end of the game, you get to freely run around and find collectibles, but more importantly, you get a chance to talk with all the game's characters, all of whom you've helped in some way deal with their various traumas and baggage. The best part is, very few of them are actually fixed. The game shows how you can help people through difficult times, but you're not just magically cured. Each character in their own way talks about what they want to do going forward, whether it's spending time with people, taking a vacation, or even just being alone to reflect. It's an incredible reward for a game that's all about mental health. And it's why Psychonauts 2 is one of the best of the year.
Rasputin?
I'm on him.
Sometimes it's nice to sit down with a game and take in a thought-provoking story. And sometimes it's nice to just hang out with friends and destroy random people online. And sometimes it's nice to just tear through a game that just knows how to be a game. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is a thrill ride of a game start to finish. Combat, exploration, and movement are polished to a perfect shine, all tied up with a solid story and stunning, absolutely stunning visual and audio presentation. This might actually be the best games have ever looked. The team over at Insomniac has been perfecting their formula since the PlayStation 1 with Spyro the Dragon. Run around fun, colorful environments, kill enemies, collect the thing, take down bosses, and repeat. It's what games are all about. Now returning to Ratchet & Clank after 2016's remake and 2013's Into the Nexus, Insomniac attempts to not only push the Ratchet series forward, but showcase the amazing potential of the PS5. Now obviously, this game isn't just about Ratchet. Insomniac made it very clear with the reveal in the box art of this game that it's also about Rivet. And it is a tall order for a game to try and introduce a new character into an established franchise and bring them up to the level of the established team. All props to Insomniac and Jennifer Hale, because Rivet is an absolute gem of a character. A fun, adventurous, and witty foil to Ratchet that just works in this world. The team has done a great job of making Rivet her own character, stand on equal terms with Ratchet, and even elevate him, Clank, and the rest of the cast. They got it right, and I think that's highlighted by the overall reception to Rivet. I'll just take a quick peek into the Ratchet & Clank forum. Oh god, incels! Story-wise, it's pretty good. Not talking Oscar levels of depth and symbolism, but this is a great little story of the well-worn Ratchet dealing with his insecurities and anxiety, diametrically opposed to Rivet dealing with anger and trust. It's lighthearted, punchy when it needs to be, and full of charm and humor. Gameplay, though, is where this game shines. Actually, it's clearly the 60 FPS ray tracing mode where this game shines. Gameplay is where this game sings, and my god have they improved things over 2016 Remake. Whether it's navigating the more linear levels with the newly added dashes, rift tethers, and wall running, or blasting through the more open levels with the hover boots, Ratchet and Rivet are a joy to control. Collecting items, breaking boxes, grinding rails, these levels are all just pure fun. Even the side missions with Clank and Glitch are a fun break from normal gameplay. For the combat side of things, Rift Apart focuses on some of the most visually frantic items yet. Some of my favorites include the Negatron Collider, the Drill Hound, and of course, Mr. Fungi. But honestly, almost all of these weapons are great to use. Rift Apart features a decent variety of enemies and bosses to blast through, and my god, it's just fun to watch them get twisted and mangled by each of the different weapons. Seriously, they must have programmed 1,000 different animations for each combination of weapon and enemy. Overall, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart doesn't do anything truly jaw-dropping, but every aspect of this game is fun, smooth, and keeps me wanting to see what's next. It's that cinematic rollercoaster PlayStation is known for, combined with fun platforming and player choice-based combat. It's a celebration of not only Ratchet & Clank, but PlayStation itself. All of the little Easter eggs and secrets referencing other PlayStation franchises are just the finishing delights on this amazing game I could recommend to anyone.
Dr. Nefarious, this is the part where you lose.
And now, time for some honorable mentions. Ooh. Wow. Nice job. Congrats. You did it. You were so close. Before we wrap things up, I want to mention a game that I felt needed a little bit more than an honorable mention. For years now, the Metroid franchise has been teetering on the edge of extinction, stuck between becoming a dead franchise to maybe actually seeing some life with the release of Metroid Prime 4. Small things like the Metroid 2 remake in 2017 and the inclusion of Ridley and Dark Samus in Smash Ultimate gave us a glimmer of hope that Metroid might have a chance at returning to Nintendo's staple of franchises. But with the development of Prime 4 practically restarting, it seemed like Samus really wouldn't be getting her chance to have that Switch moment after all. That is, until E3 2021. If you're not familiar with why the name Dread is so important, it's actually the name of the sequel to Metroid Fusion. Obviously, because Metroid Dread is the sequel to Metroid Fusion. But, in fact, this game was actually announced roughly 17 years ago. But it's been in this constant state of development hell, or whether or not it's really actually a game or not, for so long that people just kind of forgot it actually existed. So the fact that in 2021, they actually say, here it is, Metroid Dread, Metroid 5 is coming out really soon, is really exciting for us longtime Metroid fans. Except, that's not really true. I am actually not a huge Metroid fan. I played most of this and this, beat this the day before Dread came out. In fact, aside from Fusion, the only one I've actually beat is... So Dread for me meant something different. It's not, finally, another 2D Metroid after all this time. It's, Finally, I can get myself to play this series that I've put off for so long. Because going back to the backlog can be kinda difficult. Only when the threat of a new game looms can I actually get myself to go back to what I missed. Case in point, playing Fusion days before. And luckily still, everything leading up to Dread looked great. But could Metroid Dread come out and be on par with all of these modern great Metroidvania experiences? Hollow Knight, Ori, Axiom Verge, even things like Dark Souls have the spirit of Metroid running in them, but in a much more modern sense. And even worse, am I actually gonna like this game?
Oh god, I better like this game. I talk up Metroid so much. I better like this.
Dread is a full, pure Metroid game. It's complex, challenging, bosses are brutal and unforgiving, the world is a massive maze with very little in the way of guidance, and the enemies are just terrifying. Even after dealing with all this, I have to ask, do I actually like Metroid? I fucking love Metroid. Metroid Dread is my favorite game of 2021. It's a game that challenges the standard of the genre it helped create and proves why Samus Aran is the queen of Metroidvanias. Dread starts off the same as any other, alone on a planet, you've lost everything, and you need to figure out what's going on. Find your way around, get your equipment back, and shoot some aliens. You get lost, you'll reach roadblocks, and you will die over and over again. But what Dread establishes very early on, and one of the biggest reasons I enjoyed this game, is failure and that struggle isn't a huge deal. The game has a very lenient checkpoint system. There's always a save room around every corner, and even when dealing with the game's hardest challenges, you can always just try again. And this game demands that you try. Shoot this block, search this corner, dodge here, parry there, trial and error. Try, fail, die, learn. Try, fail, die, learn. Try, succeed. The best part isn't even winning, but actually learning to get through. For exploring, when you first jump in, you have to take the game one room at a time. What freak alien horror will kill me in this room? You'll encounter enemies that at first seem really unfair.
This enemy is bullshit.
But get a new power or pick up a new strategy, and all of a sudden, an area that took you hours to get through can be blasted through in a matter of minutes.
I'm bullshit.
Those enemies fall before your insurmountable might. By the time you reach the ending areas of the game, you become so powerful that no enemy around you can even touch you at this point. It makes for one of the best victory laps when you start tracking down the last few collectibles. Speaking of, I really do think this game just hands out power in a really fun way. For most Metroid games, you'll get the Morph Ball pretty early on. Never feels that special. Dread holds it back just enough to make that moment when you finally get back to older areas extremely rewarding. The game also works this into the gravity suit as well. You'll be tortured by underwater areas for over the course of the game before finally finding the suit and being able to freely move around. And the water areas themselves aren't that too bad to deal with. It's so liberating though. Also, Samus moves better than any 2D character I have ever played as. The new dash and slide along with the improvements to wall jumps makes getting around ZDR a blast.
Metroid Blast?
Quiet you. Dread's unique twist is the addition of the enemy bosses, mindless killing machines that will cause instant death if you come into contact with them. They're basically placed in these fun, intricate obstacle courses and just chase you around as you try to figure out where to go. They fit Metroid really well and are a great change of pace. Again, they start off as this insurmountable threat, but by the time you're wrapping things up, they just become another bump in the road and they won't stop Samus from getting through. Bosses are the star of the game. While some of them are pretty standard, hit the glowing weak spot kind of affairs, quite a few of these bosses really do a good job of hiding just enough info about their vulnerabilities as to not make them boring. You'll have to really experiment and relearn the full capabilities of your arsenal. Most bosses will have a wide range of attacks, from dodge and projectiles to, oh my god, what is this? To, oh my god, what is this? How am I supposed to? Oh, wait, does this? Yes, it does! Dread just makes this pattern fun. Meet boss, see crazy attacks, die. Learn to dodge a couple, die. Learn to block a couple, die. And then finally, find the weak spot. It all leads to a truly exceptional final boss that forces you to use your entire arsenal if you want to get a chance to get through. The entire final sequence in this game is not only a brutal test of your skills, but another 10 out of 10 hype moment that I honestly just wasn't expecting from a Metroid game.
I mean, what do I know? I only beat Metroid Other M. I didn't think they could tell a good Metroid story.
Metroid's story is at its best when it's kept in the background for the most part, and highlighted with a few key moments. Dread follows this to the letter and makes these key moments not only exciting for longtime fans, but underlines the one absolute in Metroid. Samus is just cool. And no matter what, a good Metroid game needs to show that. Dread is easily my favorite game from 2021. I beat it once, had such a great time that I immediately wanted to play again, which I never do. I actually went as far as to learn speedrunning strats to get the best time. I love this game. I am a Metroid fan, and I am glad that Samus Aran is finally back amongst the greats. Metroid Dread 2021 Game of the Year. So that's this year's list. Congrats to all of our winners of the 2021 Jody Awards. I hope you all enjoyed this video. It actually takes a really long time to make. And maybe you actually saw a game that you might actually want to try to play. That's kind of the goal of these things, right? And oh yeah, I know, it was top 11 games of the year because I couldn't leave Pokemon Unite out. It's the game I played the most, right? But you know what? I actually didn't ask this. Carbon-based Bander, what was your game of the year?
Arise now, ye tarnished.
No Carbon-based Bander. Elden Ring came out in 2022. Oh. Well, then it's Wordle.